Today on the Bradlink podcast, we're talking all about how to start your wedding day timeline. We've got 5 tips here to make the wedding day timeline be a breeze while you're doing your wedding planning, and we can go over them really quickly. But if you happen to need more expert wedding planning advice, you can check out our wedding pros that we have listed, and they can give you some customized information. But let's start with item number 1, and that's list all of the highlights you would like to hit. From the cake cutting to the ceremony itself, you want to start with a list of highlights to make sure that everything that you want to happen on your wedding day actually happens, because this day can go by pretty fast and it's easy for things to get lost or confused when there's so much going on in such a short amount of time. You want to go over each part in more detail after you list the big highlights. So, for example, you might have listed your ceremony, but within your ceremony, you're going to have a processional, a reading, a unity ceremony, and then, of course, the recessional when you walk back down the aisle once it's over. You want to review to make sure that you aren't forgetting anything that is important to you and you're remembering all of the moving parts for each highlight that you want to hit. Don't forget that there's more to a wedding day than just the event. So, your wedding day timeline and your agenda is actually going to start in the very morning, right when you first wake up, and go into hair, makeup, and photography. And maybe you might even want to include arrival times to the venue. Next item is to estimate time for each item on the agenda to be completed. When you're doing this, you can work with your hired wedding pros for more accurate estimates. We've got a great list of wedding planning experts on our website, thebridelink.com. And you also want to pad your time so you know that you have a little bit of wiggle room if you run behind. So pop in a few extra spots where there's 5 or 10 minutes where you don't really have anything planned, and it's okay if you run over. When you work with your wedding pros, they can give you the most accurate estimates so you know that you're doing a good job in estimating your timeline. Number 3, start creating an order for your list of highlights. Now, you want to make sure to confirm vendor timing with your order. So, for example, you can't schedule in 8 hours worth of photography time if you only purchase a 6 hour package. You're going to want to start from the very beginning when you're arriving on site to the venue and getting hair and makeup done, and then just go through the day in your mind and try to think of what order you want everything to happen. Again, when you're working with your wedding pros, they can give you some really good advice on what order things should happen, and make sure that you're not forgetting any important things like sunset photos and timing that has to be really specific throughout the day. Number 4, add in arrival times. From setup to teardown, you want to make sure that you know the arrival times of not only your wedding pros, but also any VIPs that are going to be really important to you the day of. So, for example, if you're considering timing for family photos, you want to make sure that the flower girl and the ring bearer are going to be on site when you're doing family photos if they're a family member, but also the flower girl and ring bearer need to be on site when you're doing wedding party photos because they're part of that as well. So you want to consider their arrival time to make sure they can participate in both of those things. But also, it's always better if little ones arrive later so they're more likely to have a nap and less likely to be fussy at the event. Thinking about things like this for each individual that's going to play a big part in your day can make it so the day just runs so much more smoothly. And also, your VIPs are much happier, more relaxed, and ready to have a good time. Number 5, review for any logistical or timing issues. This is crucial because you might be able to identify a mistake that you made in creating your timeline before the wedding even starts, and that way it's not a problem. So, for example, you don't want to let the cake be delivered too early from when it's going to be cut during reception time, especially if you're doing an outdoor wedding in the heat, because you don't want the icing to melt. So, looking for any logistical issues that might come up or any timing issues, like maybe you have photos scheduled before a certain particular person was scheduled to arrive. Just reviewing that and making sure there's as little issues as possible starting the day of will just make you feel much more confident when you're handing out your timeline, and much, much less stressed when you wake up the morning of your wedding. So for more expert wedding planning advice, follow us on thebridelink.com.